Today on Unpacked, your friend had said you're going to put all your problems, all your hurts, all your pains on that road and run it away, basically.
Whatever your husband did, he's going to lie down this road and you're going to run over all those challenges. Mountains are symbolic to hardship. It's not about you. The mountain is there, and therefore you're not going to conquer it. You conquer yourself.
Climbing many mountains and running many marathons, all in the name of conquering life's challenges. Today's guest is here to share her story. Let's unpack. Khanyi Mlambo is a Soweto-born business executive, speaker, and adventurer. As a mountain climber and marathon runner, she has used every adventure undertaken as an opportunity to overcome pain and turn it into power. This is her story. Let's unpack. Khanyi, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Relebogile, and thank you for inviting me to your show.
So take us back to the time you were born, because there was some really exceptional circumstances around your birth and even you getting the name Khanyi.
Thank you so much, in fact, for your intro, that mountaineering is about conquering. So when I was born, my name Khanyi came from a story that my mother at the time was expecting my brother. And unfortunately, in the 6th term of her pregnancy, my brother was kidnapped. And
so as in in her
6 months.
6th month of the pregnancy, carrying
me.
Your brother was kidnapped.
Yes, and I'm the last born at home. Yes. She had given birth to 10 children by then, so I was number 10.
Wow.
And it was difficult for my mother to handle the fact that she could not get my brother to be found. The police had stopped looking for him.
Wow.
So throughout that pregnancy, she just knew that the child who had been lost for her was still alive. She still had hope that she would find my brother. So she decided to give me a name, Khanyi, saying, this one who's coming now is going to light a way for the brother to come home. My brother's name was Umqoqi. My mother had a thing of giving us name depending on the circumstances that she was faced with at the time. On the day when I was born at Baragwanath Hospital, my mother told us the story that my brother was found.
What?
So there I was, Khanyi, there her child dropped off outside our home in Dube, Soweto. Nobody explained where he was and how he got back home. But on that day of Khanyi being born, my brother was found. So that's the name.
How old was he at the time?
He was 5 years old.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
Ooh. So, I mean, do you feel the pressure of your name, Khanyi, knowing the circumstances?
Us black people and names, and we call it black text and everything.
Yes.
I was black text, day one. I'm born, you're Khanyi, you're going to brighten up our life here at home. It was a very difficult circumstances that my mother was facing, having 10 children, plus 3 more kids that she was given by her bigger sister, and my father's firstborn child, whom my mother raised. So in total, she raised 13 children.
Wow.
My mother was the kind of a person who also had many other kids. There was a time when I was growing up that I never knew whether I was the real child or there was somebody else, because there was always many children. So I felt the sense of responsibility from early on that my name meant something and that my name had to count for something and that I had to do something about it.
So throughout your upbringing, was there ever a point where you thought to yourself that you're going to do great things? Because obviously I know your story and how amazingly you've conquered the many things that you have, right? But just in hindsight, do you think there was a part of you that knew that there was something different and special about you?
Relebogile, there was. From early on, I just knew that there was something that I needed to do. From the age 13, when I turned 13, it was the biggest turning point of my life. Again, I had the sense of responsibility that I was in a point in time where I needed to do something about my life. When we were playing games as young girls, dolls, somebody's a teacher, somebody's a doctor, I just knew that I was going to be something big. I knew that people were going to read about me one day. I would pretend that I'm on stage and I'm telling a story. So there was always, I can't explain exactly how, but I was always very intentional in terms of what I did, the actions that I took, and what my name meant, and what I was meant to be. I knew that from early in my life.
Were you an athletic child?
Far from it. In fact, at school, if they needed to choose kids to participate in athletics, I would not even be counted because I had no talent whatsoever. Yes. And also, when it came to recreational activities at school, I would never be counted. I was that child who was always beaten up because I was not performing.
Wow.
Or I was the weakest link in the team. So I'm the last person who should be telling a story about I'm a marathoner, I'm a mountaineer, based on how I grew up.
So if we are to look at the fact that you are a marathon runner and a mountaineer, which one did you actually do first? And what were the circumstances that inspired you to do that? Considering you were not this athletic person, you get people that were running at school and they continue to their adulthood, but we're now puppets in jail.
Life throws things at us, and it just depends how you receive what life is throwing at you and how do you respond. I come from Soweto, and the first marathon that I ran was Soweto Marathon. At the time when I started running, I had already been married. I got married when I was very young, my first marriage. And if I can just put it out there, I got married twice. So I tried, and it didn't work.
There can still be another time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Elizabeth Taylor can't be alone in that whole journey. So, Relebogile, I got married very young in a highly charged relationship. For me, love at first sight. For my first husband, took him a while, but he got around the fact that we were a team. We were meant to be together. And I got married to a young, angry man, based on his own background and his own issues. And I was there fully wanting to be in a marriage based on how I saw my mother's life panned out in front of me. My mother's marriage was very difficult. Our upbringing was so dysfunctional in terms of she was exposed to a difficult man who in many instances subjected her to abuse, physical, emotional, and in many ways. But my mother stayed in her marriage. So my whole outlook, the influence that she had on me was that you stay in a marriage. So getting married for the first time, I'm young, and I just wanted to do everything I could to make sure that I stay in the marriage. And whatever my first husband was unleashing in his own way, dealing with his own issues, for me, it was right. It was normal because I had seen it in my own life. So by the time I said enough, by the time I was at the point where I was not going to allow how I was impacted in my marriage, it had many, many beautiful angles to it. But the biggest difficulty was just dealing with somebody who was just so angry and somebody whom I could not just turn around to show that actually we're not fighting. This thing is a marriage, is not a fight. And therefore being subjected to some of the many difficulties like many people go through in marriages. A friend of mine in fact, my first husband introduced me to running, believe it or not.
Wow.
He was a runner. I didn't know anything about running. So in our marriage, he was the athlete in the family. But when I left, I continued with my running.
You had started running with him?
I had started running with him.
And because of him?
And because of him, he actually introduced me in the world of running. But no marathon, like 5 kilometers, 6 kilometers, and not just follow behind him.
But 5 kilometers is a lot, like for somebody who was not athletic.
Yes.
And I mean, it's one thing to say, I'll support that, baby, I'll run with you for this race. It's another thing to keep doing it.
Yes.
So what was it that you connected to the running?
It was they know how to run. You know, a lot of us don't understand that in anything that we need to do in life, you need to understand exactly what it is and why. So even with running, anybody, I believe, can run as long as you understand what running means and why are you running. So what I was taught, Khanyi, you're running so that you can preserve your long-term health, your life in future. You also run because this is a personal challenge. You finish 1 kilometer, the next run 2 kilometers, 10 kilometers, and voila, you've done a marathon, all 42 kilometers of it. So what I learned in the first stages of my running through my first husband was the principle of running. And also it's about the commitment and how you have to put yourself there, wake up in the morning and go and run. And that's what I learned, those principles. It's a part and parcel of my whole life story. What is the principle? What is the commitment, and how do you bring yourself there first?
So now the first marathon, what are the circumstances that you're like, okay, I'm doing this?
Oh my goodness. So I know nothing about 42 kilometers. I know I can run 5 kilometers. In fact, at the time, I did not even know distances.
Yes.
So I met a friend who had done Comrades Marathon, who was a seasoned runner, and said to me, Khanyi, you know, you can run a marathon, because you could see I could run 1 kilometer, 5. I'm like, no, I can't run Comrades Marathons, like 90 kilometers, it's impossible. But he said I had enough drive, I had enough hunger, and I had so much pain that I needed to deal with. I actually went into depression after my first marriage. And
so was this due because your marriage ended?
Yes.
And you had made the decision that this is not working.
Yes.
And I'm done.
Yes.
And that's the hurt and the depression that you were dealing with then.
Yes. It was the hurt of a loss of a marriage. It was also the depression of having spent the period of time in my marriage without standing up for myself. Remember, I saw a mother who was so accommodating, so forgiving. So some of the things, they came to me after the marriage that, no, that should not have happened. No, Khanyi, you should not have allowed that. And then only then did my anger come out. Only then when I realized what I had subjected myself to, unbeknown to me, began to haunt me. And that's the depressive state. And this friend of mine said, you know, Khanyi, you're going to run a marathon. After the marathon, we're going to train for Comrades Marathon. And for Comrades Marathon, you're going to put everything that had happened in your life before. Whatever your husband did, whatever he said to you, whatever you have also subjected yourself to, is going to lie down this road, and you're going to run over all those challenges. So first, Soweto Marathon, I finished that marathon. I thought I had lost my legs. I thought I could not breathe. I could not function. It took me a while to actually take it in that I had run a marathon in my own background. The nicest thing was the marathon ran just behind my mother's home.
Oh, wow.
So everybody in Dube was there seeing me as a runner. People I went to school with, surprise, surprise, there's Khanyi running. It was one of the biggest achievements of my life to find myself there.
Was it, you know, because I'm listening to you talk and I'm thinking about the fact that your friend had said you're going to put all your problems, all your hurts, all your pains on that road and run it away, basically. Was it emotional running? Did you have moments where you wanted to cry? And it could have been because of the pain of your legs or the pain of what it means to be running.
You know, Relebogile, I cannot put it in words enough, the emotional state that I found myself in. When you are at the beginning, at the start of the marathon, there's throngs of people. Everybody's nervous. Don't look at marathon as even though, earlier on you said you're nervous because we're coming here for the first time in the studio.
Yeah.
Everybody's nervous. Now imagine being the first time runner. I know nothing about running beyond 20 kilometers as an example. So every hurdle, every hill, every corner, every blister, it was just so emotional to me. I was so aware and present at that moment that I'm doing something that I never thought I'd be able to do. But also it was a moment where I remembered what my teacher said, you can't run. I remembered how, when I was young, my friends at the time, you know how cruel young people and kids can be, they would not choose me to be part of the team when they were choosing each other. And there, 21 kilometers. In fact, because it was 42, I never even realized when I got to 21. When I got to 32 kilometers, I never even noticed. I only noticed when I got to 40 that actually I've done something extraordinary.
Wow.
By the time I got to 42, facing the finish line, I cried because I was that emotional about everything that I had gone through in my life.
So the first mountain you conquered, what were those circumstances? And did it make it easier that you had, achieved a marathon in terms of the motivation that, I could do that, so this I can do?
You know, the sort of like the ego of a young person. I'm a marathoner. I've done Combray's Marathon. Mountains is nothing. I actually had to be humbled. I was very close to my mother. I was committed to my mother. I had seen her difficult journey raising us. And there she was. I was okay now. I was qualified. I was in the architectural profession. I was an executive. And all I wanted to do was to have more time to take care of my mother and somehow help to take away all the pain and all the tears that she had gone through because of raising us. And then suddenly, my mother fell sick. She was 84 years at that time. And everything that I had planned, which I thought was up to me, was crumbling in front of me. She was not going to be there. She was diagnosed with cervical cancer. And I was told what that sickness was going to do to her body and that how much she had in terms of living the last days of her life. So it was the biggest challenge for me. And I needed something much more bigger to deal with the fact that my mother was not going to be around. Having made her the pinnacle of my life and everything that I wanted to achieve with everything that I had. So there was an opportunity to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. You know, mountains are a great symbol of difficulty. Mountains are symbolic to hardship. And I took the challenge to summit Mount Kilimanjaro with an understanding that I'm going to have to conquer my fear of a future without my mother. There's a saying in mountaineering, you don't conquer the mountain, you conquer yourself. So when I understand the concept of having to conquer life without my mother, I had to put myself there. So Mount Kilimanjaro, being the mountain in the continent, was so significant for me to be able to climb and challenge myself in going through each day of climbing a mountain, overcoming every challenge that's provided by the day, by each step that you take. So this whole attitude, I'm a marathoner, I've done Combray's Marathon, it meant absolutely nothing because in mountaineering, it's a totally different ballgame. In running, you have people, as an example, who urge you on. You've got spectators, everybody, yeah, you're doing great. You're going to get there. You're almost done. On mountains, there are no spectators. You put yourself there, literally on a daily basis. In fact, facing death, because mountaineering is an issue of life and death. And many people have gone through many difficulties. We know many South Africans whose lives were lost on this mountain. Summiting Kilimanjaro for me was one of those biggest issues of my personal life that I had to overcome and achieved. And I was able to face the rest of my future knowing that my mother is no more.
So when you summited and you made it to the top, was the fear of a possible life without your mom, as in she was still around when you were climbing, right?
She had already gone.
So she had already gone.
Yes.
And this is now the reality that you are facing is mom is gone and I have to face this fear of mine of being without her.
Yes.
So as you are climbing, which is literally one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, what is going through your mind? What are you saying to yourself? in terms of conquering yourself?
You know, the first day of the climb, mountain climbing is the biggest teacher of life lessons. So we go to the foot of the mountain, we look at this huge mountain in front of us, and it looked impossible to climb. So each event of my life, my mother's passing was already a mountain on its own. So having the guides to take us through the first day, where you start slowly, slowly. Mountaineering is about pacing yourself. So whilst the summit is high up there, whilst your challenges are bigger than you, but you're not going to rush and run and get into the top so that you solve all your problems immediately. Some of life's problems, particularly mine, I had to take a step back and say, Khanyi, we're going to start all over again. You're going to believe and trust. You're going to wake yourself up again and face another day. You still have to finish your dreams of going to school, as an example. You still have to finish your dreams of being a mother yourself. You still have to go through some of the life achievements and ambitions that you have. Because my biggest achievement for me and ambition had been simply limited to my mother's life was going to be okay because of me. Who am I to think that I actually own that much power? And the mountain humbled me. By day 3, when I realized that, in fact, the guides, I mean, those guys are much, much younger, much, much more thinner than some of us. And you look at them and you're thinking, there's no way this guy is going to help me to summit. It's the humility that you are taught. You are forced to have a teachable spirit. That as much as I may have achieved and gotten over so many things in my life, there's still a whole lot more to learn. And I had to learn those steps of climbing, of breathing. One of the biggest lessons in mountains is you do more with less, where you have very little water to drink because there's no available water. You have a small tent to sleep in. You're facing elements that are natural, that are not nursing your situation. The weather doesn't say, Khanyi is fearful of the cold, so let me be warmer today. It's not about you. The mountain is there. You are the one who have come to the mountain. And therefore, you're not going to conquer it. You conquer yourself. And that was the journey of learning to live without my mother. Yes, she was a big force in my life. So it's minus the force of a physical presence in my life, meaning it does not mean Khanyi, your life is less just because she is not there.
And I think you've explained it so beautifully about the symbolism of a mountain, because a lot of our problems in life are mountains. So when you came back, after you summited, you made this great achievement and you landed back at the bottom of the mountain. What was the message you told yourself?
It was one of those emotional moments of complete surrender and complete acceptance of me. But Khanyi, you're okay, and you are still going to be okay. Khanyi, you do matter, and you're going to even achieve greater things. The biggest lesson on the mountain when we summited. So it's a hard grind. You're going up, it's cold, minus 10 degrees. You're thinking at some point you're dying. You're hoping at some point that you're like asking yourselves, why am I even here? I mean, I'm just a black girl from Soweto. This is a white man's sport. Why am I here? And then you get to the point after that hardship, to the top, and then the guys say to you, only have 5 or 10 minutes. Take a picture and move on. So you're thinking, it's been so hard. It's been 5 days of climbing. I need more time to celebrate. I learned immediately that some of the things that we achieve in our lives, you don't have to spend too much time celebrating because there's another mountain. So when you go to the bottom, once I celebrated the fact that I had submitted, the fact that I had overcome my own fears, and the fact that I knew that I'm okay, I will be able to face the future without my mother, I just knew that there was another mountain that I needed to climb. So celebrate that, but quickly, and move on, because there's so much to do in life. That was the message to me.
In terms of your first comrades, so this friend had said to you, we're going to train. You're going to do this first comrades. Did it bring for you what you thought it would bring for you? And I mean, running Soweto Marathon versus the comrades is more than double the distance, more than double the time. It's a whole different mountain to climb. What was that experience like for you?
The most important thing about Comrades Marathon is that it minimizes some of the challenges that you thought were. I thought a marathon was the biggest achievement, was the most difficult thing. No, it's actually double the distance. In fact, more than double the distance. And also what I got out of Comrades Marathon, that whole sense of self-discipline, that even if you're facing the hill, it's 70 kilometers, you still have to climb that hill. You know, when we talk about the biggest temptation, you find it in running, especially Comrades Marathon. So you're running, you are at 80 kilometers, you've got 7 or 9 kilometers to go, and there are these kumbis that are driving alongside if you watch the marathon. Those kumbis, we call them rescue buses. They're waiting for people who are going to give up, people who can't. So we call them Usatane, literally the devil.
Because it's the temptation.
Exactly. There's nothing as tempting as that kumbi, because you already see people, they're sitting inside, they're already eating ice cream, they're drinking. It's nice. You want to be there. And you're still facing this hill. And it takes the difference between how hungry you are to get over the hill, and also why are you there in the first place. So it's the message that you need to keep reminding yourself, why am I running this? And therefore, it makes the hill much more attainable, because if your goal of achieving the Comrades Marathon medal is bigger than that hill, you can actually overcome. So when I finished my first Comrades, yes, I did meet the goal of saying, the fact that you got divorced, Khanyi, does not make you less of a woman. Because there are also the societal pressures, especially for us as women, and I'm sure men as well, you take it as a personal failure. This was somebody that I just knew we were meant to be together. I was that young, so how did it happen that I could not make it in the marriage?
And it was how many years that you were married before it ended?
It was a very short stint of 5 years. Impactful, highly charged, energetic. So also it ended once it was still on the high. And therefore I was battling with managing the fact that it ended that abruptly. But when I finished Comrades Marathon, and yes, I had a self-talk throughout those hills. And I also had a talk to him. I would say him, yeah, is this what you said to me? Okay, let's see if that counts. And then you finish the hill, you look back and say, I got over that. So at the end of the Comrades Marathon, it was a self-inspiration to me. It was encouragement that came from deeper within me. Of course, having been supported and helped by friends and many others, because you don't travel these journeys on your own. But Khanyi had to put herself there to the test. And I was able to say, Tick, you've passed that one. You'll be okay.
So at some point, you become a mother. And there is something significant that you did in terms of a mountain or running in relation to this. But you're not just mother to one, you are mother to many.
Yes.
What is the story behind that?
You know, as I said, my life story is a story of losses and a story of events that are difficult. So they are expected to have as many children as my mother. And as it turned out, I could not have my own children. No matter how much I tried, no matter how many interventions that we had, it just did not happen.
And was this with your second marriage?
With my first husband. We started
with your first husband,
in my first marriage. Then even in the second marriage, many attempts for me to conceive. And it was the biggest dream of mine and the biggest loss, losing the children that were yet not born from me. So as usual, conquering this biggest mountain of, again, a life, not having given birth, knowing, again, the societal issues, my own personal dreams, seeing myself raising my own kids, dashed like that. It took me to adopting and fostering children, and I have 13 of them.
Wow.
And I did that because the number 13 for me is so significant in that my mother raised 13 of her own, and many others. And I wanted to be able to say, you know, God, even if you didn't give me mine, but I think you gave me another way of seeing how it's still going to be possible to experience motherhood. And that took me to climbing another biggest mountain. And I challenged myself to climb the highest mountain in Europe, Mount Elbrus, to raise funds for me to be able to support my children, particularly their education. It was a totally different challenge at a totally different level, because whilst Kilimanjaro is a mountain difficult on its own, this particular mountain is technical, and it's more around how you manage using the new tools and the new way of climbing compared to just trekking or hiking the highest mountain in the continent. And that's my story around why I climbed another mountain.
So then, you know, all in all, you did how many international mountains?
I've done 3 international mountains, and I've done a mountain in South Africa, Mafadi in Drakensberg, in fact, during 2021 last year. Because it's one thing to achieve and conquer yourself in mountains around the world. It's another to do it in your own background. Just like the Soweto Marathon meant so much to me, Comrades Marathon in my own country, but also conquering Mafadi in Drakensberg was another challenge that post-COVID-19, how does one come up and still become a functionable human being and still be able to face all the challenges based on how we were all put in one corner by COVID-19. Like, you're going to sit down, you're going to listen, and hopefully you come out here having learned something differently. And that, for me, is the basis of how my whole life has just been met up.
So total number of marathons that you've run?
Oh, you want to reveal my age. Okay, I started running when I was very young. When I count the marathons, I started running from 1998. It could be over 200 marathons that I've done.
So
just
over
standard
200
marathons.
standard marathons. How
Just
many
standard
comrades?
Marathon, 10 comrades marathons.
10 comrades.
Yes.
How many mountains?
3 mountains, major mountains. And then I've done 6 of the biggest international marathons called the 6 World Championship Marathons, which I'm one of the 2 South African Black women, by the way, to have that medal. So again,
Which is amazing, absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
And what was the significance of the 6 international marathons?
For me, Relebogile is always going back to the basis, the story. What is the story and why I do what I do? I've always been told when I was young, you can't do this, you can't have that, your family is dysfunctional, your father abandoned you, there's been so many tragedies in your life, you can't travel. There was a point, like many Black young South Africans, we did not have shoes. So going on holiday or even thinking that one could travel overseas was out of the picture. So when I had an opportunity to do that, like I've done so many marathons in my own country. So what is the next level? What is the next challenge? Similar to, yes, you've now got 10 Comrades Marathon. It doesn't end there. How can you push yourself even beyond just getting a green number at Comrades Marathon? I've done 10 of the 2 Oceans Marathons in Cape Town, the Ultra Marathon. How much more can I still push myself? And I'm proud to say, whenever you travel to these 6 big cities where this marathon is hosted, you will find my name. They've got the Wall of Fame of people who've done these marathons around the world. So I'm able to look back and say, you know, Ma, all your pain, all your tears were not in vain. Look where your child is today. And that's why I push myself in the manner that I do.
So you're going to continue climbing mountains. You're going to continue running marathons. What message would you give to the viewers watching, you know, of what they can take out of your story? Because for you, it's mountaineering, it's running comrades, running marathons. Maybe it could be something else for them.
It's very important in life, firstly, to understand yourself and where you are at, and accept your circumstances, that you know things are not okay. But what's even more important is not to allow yourself to be a victim. There are certain things that are within our control, and there are things that, of course, are outside your control. The fact that my father left me and my mother and my siblings, I could not control that. But I was able to control later in life that I'm not going to be a victim to my father. I'm not going to remain being shamed. I'm not going to remain with this background of, oh my goodness, she had such a hardship when she was raised or when she was growing up. So you can rise up out of our circumstances. Some of the tragedies that we face in our lives, childlessness. There are many people who see childlessness as, that's it, I'm done, there's nothing more. But I understand that being childless is not less. And there's another opportunity of using the same, whether I call it the biggest challenge of my life, in a positive way. There's 13 children who've gained out of having Khanyi as a mother. I could have had my own 2, focus on my 2 and giving them the best. And there would have been 11 other children who never had an opportunity to be raised or being provided some of the opportunities that I have. So my encouragement to people who are watching the show, there are many mountains. It's about one step at a time. Pace yourself. Get to the foot of the mountain. In fact, we say you don't measure the mountain in terms of how high it is. You don't measure the mountain when you are at the bottom. You climb that mountain and say, oh, that's how high the mountain was. Because then it minimizes your challenges. And if I can just encourage all of us, that it's about self-leadership, owning your story, giving yourself your own power, and understanding that nobody owes you anything. If you have the power and the control to do something about your life, bring yourself to the table and don't look at anybody else.
Khanyi, thank you so much for inspiring us with your phenomenal story, but for just overcoming all that you have. I know that at some point, you hopefully will be penning your story in detail so we can read and find out all about what you've gone through. But for what you have shared with us today, thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
#Unpacked with Relebogile. Is there something that you got to take out of the story, or maybe the story made you realize some of the mountains that you still need to conquer? I hope you're able to lay all of your problems on the road and figuratively run them away. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good night. Next time on Unpacked.
The only thing that I felt was when something opened my door and dragged me.
You were being pulled out the car.
Yes.
Do you have any idea who or what pulled you out the car?
If I'm to answer that, I'd say it's my God.
When did the doctors tell you the seriousness of your injuries?
That was the time where I would scream. The burns on their own, it was just too much.
Thank you so much for watching Unpacked with Relebogile Mamoja. Make sure you subscribe to my channel where you can get to watch more episodes. But more importantly, you can be part of our online community. Comment down below, share with us who you'd like to see on the show, what story you'd like us to discuss. We love engaging with you. Keep it coming and don't forget to subscribe.